Well, hello everybody. Happy Saturday. I hope you're all having a wonderful weekend. And yay, we have uh, Dr. Jerry. We always call him Dr. Jerry. Jerry Marzinsky with us again today, our monthly check-in with our mental health expert. And then, of course, we have very special guest with us this evening as well, Sherry Swiney, who has been Dr. Jerry's co-author and as Dr. Jerry says, the first sane person you could speak to about these voices. So we're going to be hearing more about that in a minute. But before we do so, I want to just quickly pop up the announcement. Oopsie. Fingers, please work properly. There we go. Okay, just the schedule. For those of you who haven't caught the shows this week, they're all there. Really had some great shows on. Gary Wayne was on earlier as well. I had the relaunch of Solutions with Shanti, the sister channel to Aris. So go check that out. That's the healing channel, and doing lots of cool things there at the moment as well. And so tomorrow, just to check in, we've got the Patreon book club at 3 o'clock Central Africa time with Jesse, the book of Daniel, one of the excluded books of the Bible. So the Patreons, you're welcome to join. Members, you can join as well. If you just check in the community section, Mornay has left a note there for you guys who want to join the Patreon tomorrow. Please send us an email. He's listed there, whatever needs to go on, just your name, etc., your YouTube name, so that we know that it's you. And then, of course, the Sunday loop. And then the usual Monday, however, Monday as well, we're having an awesome round table. Danny Henderson, myself, Rachel Vaughan, Kathy O'Brien, Beverly Rhodes, and Dr. Juliet Engel. Fantastic roundtable of survivors that we're going to be chatting to on Monday, 3 o'clock Central Africa time. So please join us for that. And yay, and welcome everybody. Lizanne, Jelena, nice to see you guys in the chat and everybody else as well. Yay. So without any further ado, welcome to Sherry Swiney and, of course, Dr. Jerry. Hello, everybody. So good to have you back, Jerry and Sherry. Jerry and Sherry. Hey, I just saw that now. It's taken Grandma a minute to click onto the Jerry and Sherry there. But Sherry, I'm going to ask you first and welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa. And yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself. You introduce yourself to the audience. We'd love to hear more about who you are and how you got to meet our Dr. Jerry.
Yeah, well, how I got to meet Dr. Jerry Marzinsky, it was kind of interesting. I was actually at the time, this was in the 90s, I was running an international prison reform group, and it was international, so there was all kinds of different countries involved, and the people in Britain were, and the people in the British area, in the European area, they were the kindest of all. They were the most sympathetic of all, because what I was presenting was how horrible the prison system was in the United States. Well, here comes Jerry. He was working as a psychiatrist, a physical, a psychoanalyst, or what were you working as?
Oh, it was like what they call it, a psychology associate or something.
Yeah, something like that. So he was working with the prisoners in with his realm, and I was working in the big picture of all the prisons. And I think, well, what was it? He and his wife wrote this program to get everybody off of addictions, alcoholic and whatnot like that. And he made it so it was really, really inexpensive and worked really well, and nobody could crack it and all that stuff. So he contacted me and told me about the program, and could I put it up on my website? I was really happy to do that. So over the course of time, he and I got to know each other. So we were emailing one another. And he was telling me a little bit about some of his cases in the prison industry, and I was telling him about the stuff I was doing in the prison industry. And he was giving me pointers because he was in there all the time, and he was telling me how the prison he was in was working, and I could relate that to the Alabama prison system. And so that was really nice. And then one day, he's writing me about one of his patients who was hearing voices, and he didn't quite know what they were. And I wrote back something like, well, I know all about those guys. They've plagued me since I was a child. And so, they're real. And he's like, really? I've known this woman for 10 years before she tells me this stuff.
Yeah, it blew me away.
Yeah.
Because I kind of knew what they were, but I was still trying to figure out the details of how they were behaving. And when she said that, it blew me away, because she's one of the most spiritual people I knew. So I found that hard to believe. So I started asking her questions about these things that only somebody who had heard them could answer correctly. And she was like, bam, 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 right down the line. I'm like blown away, So from then on, she was the first sane person I could talk to about what I was learning about these voices. I already had a big chunk of knowledge, but I was still searching. And so she was my, when I ran into something new, I'd contact Sherry. So what do you think about this? This is what's happened. And, she would tell me her opinion, and I'd tell her mine. And from then on, we were just kind of like a team. Finally, we decided, well, we got to let the world know about this. And we wrote this book together called An Amazing Journey Through the Psychotic Mind, and the, exposure of the ivory tower.
Yeah, breaking the spell of the ivory.
Breaking the spell of the ivory tower.
It is under a spell. We know that.
It is under a spell.
Yes.
And so we got to tell the world about this. And Sherry said, yeah, we do. So it took us two years to write this thing. I was worn out by the time we were done. But it's on Amazon now, and it's got like a 4.7 rating. It's on up there.
Well, and it's not only on Amazon. There's a link in Jerry's page that takes you directly to Lulu, because we get and I don't know if this applies to South Africa. So if it applies okay in the United States. I don't know if it's in other countries. So, but so we get a much larger, what do you call it? Reward, loyalty, something or other.
Yeah.
And so, whereas the other companies, they take off their part, and then Lulu takes off their part. By the time we have like, a few pennies that are, for each book.
Yeah.
It's like, oh gosh, well, okay, let's just start put them into the libraries.
Yeah.
We're not making a huge profit off of this book. So, and we're happy to do that. We're not complaining. It's just, the information needs to get out there. And in fact, Jerry and I were talking just the other day about let's put them in libraries. So I think you have a library set up already, Jerry.
Yep, they already went in. They're being cataloged and sent around to the different libraries in Pima County right now.
Right. So whenever, so we're going to do some research and figure out different libraries. If you have libraries in South Africa, let us know, because we'll be glad to send them to and tell us the protocol.
Oh yeah. We have libraries, yeah.
Yeah, so just tell us how to go about it. Do we go through you? Do we go directly to the library, and what's their protocol? That kind, because we don't know about how other countries work.
Yeah, I can check up on that for sure.
Yeah,
I can definitely check up on that.
So once that happens, and people are translating our book. We have it translated into French, German, Spanish. And what other? Well, we have a person who is attempting to translate it into Russian. I haven't heard about that for a long time. And then we have another individual who's saying that she will translate it into Japanese. I haven't heard about that so far, but that would be wonderful. So we're always looking for people who are familiar with the language, so that, because we don't know these other languages, and so we don't know if it's being translated properly or not. So we like to have someone in that who knows that language, who may not be affiliated with the translator person, to read it over and make sure that it's done correctly. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, we have those published. They're on the Lulu page, and I don't know that they're on Amazon.
Oh, they're on Amazon. They've been on Amazon forever.
The languages.
No, yeah, I think they are.
Oh, I haven't seen it on. I've only seen it in English on Amazon.
Oh, okay, I'll have to check into that.
Yeah. Anyway, so our book is doing rather well. People who've read it, who they like it, they enjoy it, and different people are affected in different ways. Who was it that told us that it's like a freaky horror movie in the beginning? Because the sheep farm guys.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah. So they were saying, "Oh, I'm going to read this again." And so, because we were talking about the book, and he's like, "I want to read this again." As I recall, it's like I forget his words exactly, but it's something like, it's like a horror movie or something. It is not like a horror movie. I guess it's in the perspective of somebody, but the introduction could be like, a horror movie, and if a person is living it, it's like they're living in a horror movie. So, yeah.
So where it came from is I already had a big body of knowledge about what these voices were. It was clear that they were consistently negative. They didn't break from that. They were running patterns, and I was finding pattern after pattern after pattern. I don't know how many patterns I'd found by the time I met Sherry, but if they're running patterns, they can't be hallucinations, as the psychiatric mafia insists. Right. So then one day, I'm telling Sherry about these things, and she goes, "Oh, I know all about those things." As a young woman, I struggled with them and beat them. And she told me her story about how she did that. And then we just, I would run information past her, because she was the first sane person I could talk to about this. And I could talk to the schizophrenics about it. They understood what the voices were and how they operated. And, I was always asking them hundreds of questions about the voices. What do they do? How do they act? What do they behave? What do they tell you? How do they react to these kind of things when you do this? So I was experimenting with, try these different things and seeing what effect that had on the voices. And then I ran into a fairly interesting case, and I was talking to Sherry about it one day just off the cuff, and she goes, "Oh, I know all about that. I experienced these things when I was a young woman, and I couldn't believe it." I said,
I want to interject here just a moment, Jerry. I need to tell the public, tell your listeners that not everybody who hears voices is automatically schizophrenic. I mean, I'm not schizophrenic. I never was schizophrenic. I heard I had intrusive thoughts coming in, but I wasn't reacting to them. I mean,
can you explain that, please, Sherry? I mean, I really like what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense to me that not everyone who has voices in their head is schizophrenic, but maybe you can explain the difference then between intrusive thoughts, right? Because I think intrusive thoughts is what the average person, right? That's not necessarily diagnosed with any mental health type label, right? Yes, we can just have negative thoughts, and we can really, really cock our minds up in that way. Really, we can.
The ones that are troublesome are the negative intrusive thoughts, and everybody has them, and it's like it's on a scale. So, the more frequent they are, the more troublesome they are.
The That's a Lie program addresses that right up front. That saying that if you, I don't remember the exact words, but if you're hearing thoughts and they sound like your own, and they're not like a voice speaking to you, it's like you're thinking something that you wouldn't ordinarily think. and you're trying to get rid of that. It's like, how do I do this? It just keeps going around and around and around, same, it's keep repeating itself. And so the That's a Lie program addresses all of that to tell the person you're not crazy. Those voices don't belong to you. Those intrusive thoughts don't belong to you. And here's how to get rid of them. They lie to you all the time. So I told my little story of how I got to that particular point. And then I went on to explain that you can confront them by saying that's a lie. It sounds so simple, but the thing is, when you're in the midst of having this rerun going on in your head, you need something really, really simple. You can't have anything complicated because you're not going to remember what to do. So that's why I made the That's a Lie program, because you can think lie. Okay, lie. That's a lie. And they will tell you, they'll usually go away if you do that. But it's something that is not an overnight fix. It takes a while. It's like having some sort of a spiritual routine. It's like, if you're one of those people that's being plagued by this, and I was as a child until I was an adult. And so, I got to know their patterns, and I was trying to figure out, how do I get rid of this? Well, I went to the library a lot, and I was reading all about the brain, trying to figure out how the brain works. And that was interesting, but it didn't help me any. But I was really trying hard, and I did, what happened to me was the book falls off the shelf and hits my toe, and it's the right book. So that happens to so many people on this planet, because the universe always has your back. But it takes a while to get to that particular point. But that's what happened to me. And I read the book, and I'm like, oh, okay, so I have a choice. I didn't even know I had a choice. I was so brainwashed by the system and by these voices, these thoughts. I had no idea I had a choice. So this book was telling me, nobody can make you feel the way that you feel. You're the one that does it, and you have a choice of how you want to feel. So that led me off on this other path. And then serendipitously, my boss at work at the engineering company, I come in one day, and he says, hey, we got a contract to do some computer programming with a water district. Would you like to learn how to do that? And I said, sure. I would love to learn how to do computer programming, write code. So they sent me to school. So while I'm in school, I'm thinking, I had read all those books about the brain, and I was putting that together with the computer programming code. And I thought, this is how my brain is working. It's working kind of like a computer. What if I could reprogram that computer? I hadn't read any of those books like Neville Goddard. If I had done that, I would have probably already knew this stuff. But so I'm thinking, because I was isolated. Almost all my life I was isolated. But so I was thinking, okay, if I could just reprogram my brain, how could I do that? Well, then that's when I got to the idea that that's just way too complicated. I need to find something really, really simple, because when I'm in the midst of being attacked, I can't think. My thinking capacity, my analyzing, my engineering capacity is vanished. So then I came up with, okay, it has to be super simple. So everything they tell me is a lie. Everything I've been told since I was a kid was a lie. So that's how I developed the That's a Lie program, and I just used it. And then I was telling some of my friends about it, who I realized they were having some kind of depression feelings and, stuff like that. And I was telling them, okay, so that's a lie. What you're hearing, what you're thinking is a lie. Say that to that thing. So they would do that, and then they would say, I just need to remember to do this because it works. So that's how that got taken off. And Jerry was the one that said, well, why don't you write that up? And then we can put it on the website, and then everybody can see it. So I wrote a blog about it. That's how that started.
And by the time I met Sherry, I already knew that these things were liars. They were consummate liars. They never told the truth. and they hit everybody. I mean, it's not just, the people that are far out. I mean, there's one time, I think I told this story before. I was out in the backyard here in Arizona whacking cactus to keep the cactus down. We don't have grass here because there's not a lot of water. So I had a machete in my hand, and my dog runs by. She's a beautiful white uh, husky. She runs by, and I have this machete in my hand, and as I'm holding this thing, this thought booms through my mind. It goes, "Cut her head off." And I was just shocked. I was just
Yeah.
totally shocked. Like, that wasn't my thought. Where did that come from? It wasn't mine. I don't own it. Wasn't thinking that thing. I was horrified that it even entered my memory, or my mind. And I was like, here I am standing there with this thought in my head, with a machete in my hand, looking at my dog. And I'm like, where did that come from? So
Yeah, you've got other stories, and we put this in the book. I think we put several stories like that in the book, different examples that people have experienced and that we happen to know about. And so, or something that happened to either one of us. And so, yeah, this happens frequently to everybody. I don't care who you are. I don't care how sane you are. I don't care how crazy you are. It happens to everybody. The idea is, as Jerry pointed out, and as we point out in our book, that you have to realize that this doesn't belong to you. This voice, this idea doesn't belong to you. It came from somewhere else. You can send it back where it came from. You can call it a lie. You can send it love, because you don't want to get angry, because that brings that whole vibe right back to you.
And they feed off of that.
That. So the idea is, you have to get to the point, and it doesn't happen overnight. At least it didn't for me and anybody else that I've known, and anybody that Jerry's known. It's a continuous baby step, like we were discussing before we went on the air. The baby steps. What did you call it, Chantel?
Bite-sized chunks.
Bite-sized chunks. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, so like that, you do bite-sized chunks. And then pretty soon you'll notice, well, you know what? Life is getting better. Life is starting to get better, a little smoother. I'm not having these episodes as much as I was before. And when I have them, I catch them right away. Jerry.
So this works really well with all negative intrusive thoughts, and there's a whole range of them. All the way from just the average guy who has negative intrusive thoughts, and then it just goes all the way to mental illness and schizophrenia, okay, where those thoughts are uncontrollable. So Sherry's thing works for that whole range. And matter of fact, before I see any clients, I always refer them ahead of time to Sherry's program, which kind of, it helps a lot. And I've got a lot of good feedback from them. There was what we're saying flies in the face of what the psychiatric mafia is telling people. I mean, they're saying, "Oh, your brain is broken. There's nothing you can do about it. You got to take these toxic medications." And it's like you have no control. Your brain is broken. So.
Yeah, so that's the medical mafia for you, as Jerry is so famously calling it. And I do too, because we've all been through the last 5 years together on the planet, and we've all gone through that whole craziness. And some of us fell for it, and some of us didn't. And those who fell for it, they had whatever consequences they had. But those who survived, whether they fell for it or not, are the better. Then they're much better. They're more awake. They're more aware that everybody's lying to them. Everybody in power, everybody in business, everybody in banking, everybody in government, and all that stuff. No matter where you are, they're lying to you. Okay, so that's what I'm thinking is the great awakening that so many people are talking about. And I think that Jerry's work with the schizophrenics and my work, along with there's a whole bunch of people out there that are doing kind of similar stuff, but they don't go into the schizophrenia part that I'm aware of. So I think that now we're in this. There's such an energy change on the planet. I feel. You feel that, Jerry?
Yeah, I do.
I feel it.
Yeah, it's a major battle. It is roaring.
Yeah, and so there's no. To me, this is just my own philosophy. There's no taking sides. There's just being and observing and watching and not following those guys' instructions. If you're going to follow them, that's fine, but don't get taken in by it. And so, if you know the backstory, that these entities are behind all of this, they're influencing those guys in one way or another. All kind of negative stuff. The ones that are trying to do good stuff, they get sabotaged, just like Jerry's patients do, just like people that are suffering from intrusive thoughts do. We get sabotaged. We sabotage ourselves, not on purpose. It just happens, and we're like, okay, why did I do that? Why did I do that to myself? So there's a lot of internal. What I'm seeing with all the stuff that I'm looking at is that there's a lot of people on the planet that are really asking themselves some important questions and sitting there, at least taking a moment to think about it.
See, the Gnostics call these things the Archons.
Yes, they do. I got to tell you a little story. When I first I was married to a guy named Patrick Swiney. That's where I got the name. And I was telling him about these entities that were telling me this stuff. And I didn't have a name for it. And then all of a sudden I got word of the Nagamani library being opened up to the public. And then those guys, the Gnostics, were talking about there's these Archons.
Before Christ, they knew about these
things. They claim that they created everything. They're your gods. They're your lords. I'm like, oh my God, they have a name. So I was so excited to tell Patrick, hey, they have a name, because I didn't know what they were called. Now I know that they're called Archons, and I know that they're part of one of the stories that each tribe on the planet has about their creation. Everybody has their own creation story, but they all kind of blend together.
Talk about Archons.
Yeah, just not by name. They call them different names.
Different things.
The devil. They call him the Jinn. They call him the ankle biters. They call him I don't know what else. A bunch of names.
The Israelis have a name for them.
And a lot of esoteric people have a lot of names for that, but it all boils down to this entity that I'm calling the Archons. Jerry's calling them.
I call them they're Archons, or voices.
Yeah, or voices. So, and somebody else is calling him something else. I wrote a blog on this, and there's a blog link on my website, which is different than Jerry's website. I sent you the links, so you can put them in your show notes. Anyway, so read the blog.
The link will be in the description. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So if you have an interest in this, just go read some of my blogs. You might enjoy them.
So psychiatry never asks, and neither does psychology, ask where thoughts come from. They never ask that. They think, oh, it's in the brain. Nobody's ever found a thought in anybody's brain out of all the autopsies that they've done. Thoughts come from outside. And Manuel Swedenborg says none of your thoughts are your own. They either come in from heaven or hell, or somewhere in between.
Yeah, and Lynn McTaggart talks about the field. That's when I first became aware of that there's a field out of around us, and memory doesn't stay in your brain. It's out in the field. So it's like we have access. Once we wake enough, we have access to this field of infinite information, I guess. And so information is energy. And so
Right.
you can get whatever information you want if you're aligned with that frequency.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes with this, getting a hold of your mind, figuring out that these are lying, intrusive thoughts. The top of the line is schizophrenia. The most severe cases are schizophrenics. There are some cultures that consider schizophrenia a gift from the gods. And when I first saw that, I thought, oh, that's interesting, because from what Jerry tells me, schizophrenia is something that's really tough to deal with as an outsider. So I mean, you got to have a particular personality, I think, like Jerry's personality. He's not afraid of anything. So he'll put up with them and find it fascinating, not scary.
Yeah.
So that puts him on a whole different level.
Well, there's been a few times I've been scared half to death.
I know that, but I'm just saying that you'll call somebody's bluff in a second.
I'm interested to know. We were talking earlier on about obviously the voices in the head, and we were talking about the pandemic as well. I've heard that unofficially the unalived rate is sitting at around 20 million. I'm sure probably more globally. So I'm wondering if any of you, Jerry or Sherry, have had any feedback on the mental health since people have taken the jab. Have you also noticed? We've noticed a myriad of physical problems, right? Medical problems that have sprung up since people have taken that thing. And I specifically ask this because I knew 7 people personally at the time that died within a month of taking this thing. I knew them personally. 3 of them, which was to me uncanny, hung themselves, suicided, exactly 2 weeks to the day after they took the shot. That to me was such an uncanny. I don't believe in coincidences. I believe the universe is actually trying to tell me something there with that. Which is why I'm asking if you guys have noticed any type of mental health expanded issues, problems since the jab.
Well, I haven't been asking people whether they took the jab or not when I start working with them. Maybe I should think about it. But I can tell you overall in the Western mental health system, everything's getting worse. In the U.S. alone, there's close to 50,000 people a year who kill themselves, right? And they kill themselves from hearing these obsessive, compulsive thoughts, like Sherry was talking about. That's like, you're no good. And what they tell the schizophrenics, they're all saying the same thing, that these voices are telling them the same thing. It's always negative, rotten stuff. You're no good. You're rotten. Nobody likes you. People are talking behind your back.
You're just a waste of skin.
Yeah, you're a waste of skin. You're just, you're going to rot and die. All you are is, you're nothing. You're worthless. And that's one of the biggest things I get in my practice, is people coming up with the idea, well, I feel worthless, and a lot of that's due to what we call a negative identity, which is a trauma that happened when they were younger. But it's kind of like the computer program is broken at that point, and it keeps running this, you're worthless, you're worthless, you're worthless. But that also adds up to when it gets further down the line with more negative, uncontrollable, intrusive thoughts. And the psychology and psychiatry won't even deal with thoughts. It's like, oh, where they come from. Well, we can't measure them, so forget it. They tell you your brain is broken. That's what psychiatry will tell you. Your brain is broken. The only thing you could do is take our toxic drugs, which makes things worse in a lot of cases. These antipsychotics, they actually slowly destroy the central nervous system. And we had patients at Central State Hospital, where I used to work, that could not walk with a normal gait. They would shuffle. They called it the Thorazine shuffle. And of course, I never saw a psychiatrist ever tell any of their patients about these nasty, dangerous side effects. They tell them some of the most obvious. Well, you're going to get dry mouth. There'll be sexual dysfunction. Your vision may blur for a while, but it'll come around. But the feedback I'm getting for these people on these medicines is they feel hollow. They feel like robots. And it doesn't cure anything. When they stop taking those medicines, those voices or intrusive thoughts, they come right back. So they're not curing anything. So the mental health centers are full. The psych hospitals are full. The prisons. When I worked in psychology in the prisons were full of mentally ill people. All right, nobody's getting any better. So you have more psychiatrists, you have more psychiatric medications, you have more psychologists on the planet than in the history of entire mankind, and people are getting worse.
I am glad to see some of the news coming out very, very slowly, of course, and in baby steps, I guess, that people are really down on the pharmaceutical companies for a lot of reasons. They're poisoning our food. They're poisoning our grounds, our waters, our air, and they're poisoning people with their drugs.
And they're lying about it.
They're lying about it. So they're doing all this advertisement. As far as I know, they're the only. They have permission to advertise, which I think is really wrong. They ought to stop doing that. They stopped doing advertising of alcohol in the United States.
Yeah, in Europe, they're not allowed to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a good thing to me because the advertising here in the United States, I hate to watch those, but sometimes I will because I want to know what they're saying, what they're trying to brainwash the people into thinking. And they'll do this whole big long list of side effects, and some of them include having mental problems, and some of them include having
suicidal ideation.
Suicidal ideation.
And that's with the antidepressants.
Yeah. And then there'll be other side effects like some of the conditions that happen with the shot, the jab. And I don't remember how to say it, but I don't remember. But anyway, some of those severe cases, and there'll be side effects on the regular new drug that they just discovered that'll fix everything for you automatically. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to do any work. You don't have to take responsibility. Just take this pill. And by the way, here's all these side effects. Consult your doctor if you think this is for you. I'm like, what?
Yeah, and it's constant.
Yeah.
You turn on, the mainstream channels, and it's like virtually every advertisement is for some kind of stupid drug.
Well, and they always do these. Oh, it's all so airy-fairy, and everybody's so happy, and they're out in the woods.
Oh yeah, they're always smiling and
they're
laughing
always
and having
smiling.
fun.
They're out in nature. Yeah, well, there should be an item out in nature. I mean, if they think people are buying this, I think that they must just be a very narrow band of folks that just don't know or don't want to know.
For the way I see this, and I mean, it's so obvious. I'm a healer, and I've been a healer for 30 odd years now. And it really is about understanding the power that resides within us.
Yes.
I mean, God lives within your heart. There is nothing more powerful than that. And you know, to give power to these entities and to be afraid of them is to admit to yourself that you believe that your fear is greater than your creator or God or source or whatever you choose to call it. I live with the other on the other side of that coin, or now kind of found my middle ground, where as long as we are going to be bowing down and thinking that this thing is greater than us, and I know it gets to a point where it is. Obviously, if you're in a psych ward and you've got severe schizophrenic, schizophrenia, stuff like that, that's bad. You've got to go through a certain process. I'm talking about either people that are coming out of it, or those of us who are living our lives just trying to get by, right, every day. So it really is understanding that God, your creative force, lives within you. And the more we go within, dissolve whatever blockages, whatever fears, come understand our fears. We need to understand why our fears are yet to begin with. We need to understand why every time I go into this room with my older sister, who is my childhood bully, I resort right back into childhood trauma patterns. I need to understand that. You see, I actually did a show, and I haven't aired it yet, with Jamie J the other day, actually on sibling rivalry and sibling bullying, which is something that is so seldom spoken about, because those patterns continue throughout life. I mean, I've had a typical scenario where I've had like Stockholm syndrome with my older sister. She was my mother as a child. And boy, she treated me like the wicked stepmother.
Oh gosh.
I'm telling you. So that in itself created so many trauma loops for me growing up, that I didn't realize how much that was affecting my relationships, my friendships, everything in life, until I started realizing, hang on, until I started understanding patterns, right? When I started becoming a healer and I started understanding patterns, I then started understanding my patterns. And then I started understanding my family dynamic. These are very important things for us to recognize, in our daily lives, in our emotional well-being. Because the one thing, and I say this a lot, is that the way that these guys get us, whether it's in SRA, satanic ritual abuse, or child trauma abuse, or any type of violation of the child, right? The place they get you is with your emotions. They disconnect you from a parent, or especially a mother. Mother represents water, she's emotion. So when you have a bad relationship with mother, or a mistrustful relationship with your mom, the one who bore you in her womb, you got to know nothing in life is going to taste sweet after that. You're always going to have something. And we have to go back and recognize the root of where things became obscured. And when we can understand that, healing becomes the order of the day. You don't even have to try and fix anything. It then fixes itself. And Sherry, I love what you were saying, because I say this a lot on my shows. You were saying this off air, is that we need to save ourselves. We need to understand the teachings that Christ gave us, and we need to apply those teachings to ourselves. Christ said, what I can do, you can do, and better. What did he mean by that? What did he mean? He was the ultimate healer. What did he mean by that? When you've understood that you hold the power of God, the living Christ within you, you can perform miracles. But it begins with you. You've got to sort out your own shit first. It's as simple as that.
Yes.
If you are not healing, yeah. Sorry, carry on, Sherry.
Well, good point bringing up the Christ thing, because when I started reading the Bible, I decided, being an engineer and working in the engineering space, I started listening to this evangelical preacher guy on TV, and he was saying a bunch of stuff, and I thought, there's something wrong with what he's saying. Never mind, I'm just going to read it myself. I'm going to take notes. I'm going to do a chart. I'm going to figure this out. Well, how arrogant can you be? I mean, that's my engineer talking, right? So that's what I read the Bible from an engineering point of view, not a religious point of view, not a spiritual point of view. I wasn't even that, I was getting spiritual, but I was kind of leaning off into the mathematical, scientific, physics type of spirituality, which is all the same to me. Anyway, so not the religious part, because I was already having my own traumas with the Catholic orphanage. So, I mean, the nuns and the mistreatment, all of that goes on there. So, and being the only one in the orphanage that actually had two parents. So that was kind of something that apparently stuck with me for a long time. But anyway, so I'm reading the Bible, and I'm reading it from an engineering point of view. And I realized that Christ was a master physicist. He was talking stuff that I grokked, kind of. I didn't have a physics background, really. I did math because I did engineering and did that kind of stuff. But, I had no idea how the math worked in physics, but I knew sacred geometry, and I knew a little tiny bit about numerology and stuff like that. And all of that's in the Bible. Christ talks about that in his stories, if you look at it from that point of view. So I was in awe. He was my best friend. I love that guy. He was high up. And so, I welcomed him into my heart, not from a religious standpoint, because I long recognized long ago that religions, I'll say a statement, and I don't mean it to be blanket for absolutely everybody, because there's always exceptions to everything. But from my perspective, religions are a control mechanism to brainwash you, to believe something and believe in the hierarchy, and you got to go through somebody else to get saved and all that stuff. You can't do it on your own. You're powerless. You're nothing. That's what I got from my religious upbringing.
And those are the guys that killed off all the Gnostics, who were telling everybody you don't need to go through their crap. You can have direct access to the God.
One thing I've noticed of being a host for 5 years on a channel that mainly interviews survivors of SRA and lots of behind the scenes work as well. 95% of the survivors have been religiously indoctrinated. And in fact, I'm going to actually go as far as saying just about 100%, because that makes you compliant. And they've used religion completely as a control mechanism. And I'm not talking about a belief system. I'm not talking about being a believer. Guys, we've got to understand there's a difference between someone who has such a belief in your Christianity that you're a believer, and there's a difference between being a believer and a religious nut. That's the difference. Because a believer, you speak with your heart, you act with your heart, you are heart-centered, and you're coming from a place of love. And love doesn't mean that you're weak. In fact, love is more powerful than anything else, right? So love is going to dissolve fear, which is demons or whatever it is that is coming your way. That's all fear-related stuff. But you've got to be so anchored and so centered in the truth of who you are. Doesn't mean you're perfect. Doesn't mean you're some holier than thou levitating monk. Not at all.
No,
you are just absolutely centered in who you are. Beyond a shadow of doubt, you carry the light of God, and you are protected by the light of God. There is nothing that you have to protect and fear It is in you. It dissolves. Your aura dissolves it. That's what I'm saying.
You're a
It's like,
fractal of God.
A
yeah,
fractal of God. That's a wonderful phrase, Jerry. I love it. I wanted to tell you a story about what I learned about religion when I was in the orphanage. Now, mind you, I was 9 years old at this time. This is a really awakening experience for me. Maybe my first awakening experience. That the nuns taught us in class that you had to go to confession every Friday so that you could go to communion on Sunday. If you took communion without going to confession, God was going to strike you dead. No questions about it. Just no questions. So don't forget to go to confession. Well, they were probably in cahoots with the priest and then blabbing all over the place with what the girls were telling him. But what 9-year-old has a whole bunch of sins to confess? Come on. So anyway, I was out playing. I didn't think about that. I believed every word that they told me. I truly believed it. I just took it as fact. And that was because of my previous brainwashing. Never mind. That's a whole different story. But so I took it as face fact and never gave it another thought. Well, I was out playing and I lost track of time. And so I kind of missed going to confession. And so when we went to church on Sunday, here's the whole church is filled up with all of us kids. And, you know, the priest is up there doing all his stuff and he's getting the host ready for communion and all this stuff and going through all this incense and all this really, really classy performance. So I wasn't looking at it that way. I was just, like, oh God, what am I going to do? I haven't gone to confession and they're going to call me up for communion. And so I was like really, really frightened. And so I couldn't tell anybody. I couldn't say anything because that's just not done. So I'm like, okay. So I'm pondering. I was frightened of the nuns. I was scared to death of the nuns because they were pretty brutal. So I'm like, okay, so they're going to beat me half to death or something. I'm just going to take my chances with God. If he wants to take me, if he's going to strike me dead, that's fine. I'll go with him. So I went up to that was my strength. I don't know where it came from. I just did that. So here I'm 9 years old. I went up there to the altar. Everybody's getting their communion. He gave me mine. I put my head down and everybody got up and left. And I stayed there and I waited. Okay, I'm just waiting for God to strike me dead. And nothing happened. And so I looked around like, okay, well, in my innocence, I'm like, okay, well, maybe he's busy. I'll just wait. So I just wait. So imagine seeing my movements from the back. The nuns are watching me. They're all quiet. And I had no idea that was going on. But anyway, so then finally, nothing happened. And I said to myself, okay, they lied to me. God doesn't strike little girls dead because they don't go to confession and they take communion. So I got up. I walked back to my pew like, we're supposed to, and knelt. Couldn't tell anybody, but I had this feeling inside of, I know something none of you knows. I couldn't tell. I was bursting. I wanted to tell everybody, but I couldn't. And the nuns were, they were the ones that had the flying wings. Did you ever see the flying nun?
The flying nun.
The flying nun. So they had those and they would flop just a little bit at the tips and their rosary strings they were heavy rosaries and they wore these big gowns and this belt around their waist was a big long rosary that went down to the hem of the dress. So we got to know their footprints. We were girls. We were, we had normal stuff going on in our bodies. And, but we were scared of those nuns. So we could tell by their footsteps who it was. Anyway, so I understand what you're saying about how all of those things affect us. And we have to heal that within ourselves. A lot of us are going to need some help because some of this stuff is pretty bizarre, pretty traumatic. I didn't get any help and I'm still on the road to recovery myself. So, I think we all are, because if we're in a general planetary awakening, which I think we are,
Well, I think we're There's one thing that sticks in my mind with regard to these obsessive thoughts is, I was working with schizophrenics in the prison, and they were sure they knew that those thoughts weren't theirs. You know, so this happened with more than one. They would ask these voices, "Who are you? What are you?" And the voices would respond, "We are you." Okay, so these things are sneaky. They put thoughts into your thought stream that sound exactly like the thousands of other thoughts that run through your brain or mind on a given day, only they're negative. You don't even you can't even tell that they're different. They sound just like all the other ones. There's no like, yeah, yeah, we're the void. No, no, it's nothing like that. It sounds like all the thousands of other thoughts, but it's negative. It's against yourself.
But they
They go,
actually do say we are you. When they told me that, I said, well, what are you talking about? We means many of you, and I'm just one.
that's what struck me too.
Yeah. So there's no we are you there. There's no there. So that's what got me over it. I just saw that. And then why don't other people see that?
Well, they don't ask the question for one,
Yeah.
and that struck me too, when the patient said they told me we are you, but they sound just like all your other thoughts. I mean, there's no difference.
Yeah.
They slip this negative stuff in there, and you're almost not aware of it.
Well, it's like contrary to what you would normally think.
Yeah.
But if you're not thinking about those kinds of things, and all of a sudden something like that pops into your head, that's not you.
Well, sometimes it's
It's like,
something you did or said, and then they jump on that and go, "Yeah, you shouldn't have said that," or now they think you're rotten, or what are they thinking about you now? Now they're talking behind your back. It they take a negative event and then they'll pour gasoline on the fire to stoke it.
right. So the trick is to get yourself to a point where you don't really care what other people think, because that's on them. It's not on you. And if you can get to that point, that's very, very helpful to.
Well, or ask yourself, where are these thoughts coming from? Because they're not in your favor.
Right. But what I'm saying is, if they come from, if they're telling you that you have to be, what will others think? And I've had that, where I was petrified of, well, I can't do that because what are they going to think? I know that feeling. So it's a rush of being, wait a minute, am I being a coward? Yeah, I was being a coward.
Right.
That's all there was.
It's like they get you. They have the ability to almost like scan your body to see where your fears and your weaknesses are, and there where your weakness and it's like a fence, right? Going to your neighbor's house and there's a hole in the fence, and that sneaky little cat keeps getting through there, or the dog keeps getting through there, or whatever keeps getting through there, right?
Yeah,
So
they're like sharks smelling blood.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's like sharks in the ocean. They smell blood, and so because they're energetic, and because your thoughts and your memory are energetic, they can go into your memory and pull up every rotten thing you've ever done and throw it in your face.
But you've got to give it the space, and it recognizes, and it's only when you've given it the space. And I know this is why when we talk about childhood trauma, most of these situations are already started from some childhood traumatic event where the child has been traumatized, and it's like their energy system is ripped wide open, and it's like the doors of their chakras are wide open, that leaves their body easy prey for these low vibrating entities to take up space in that body and make it their home. They're hitchhikers.
Yeah, even from the moment of in the delivery room. If you go to a hospital and you go into the delivery room, I don't know how it is today, but I know how it was when I was born. It was all hospital stuff. Because these guys, they still today are kind of doing the same thing, I think. But they're all in the material world. They don't have a spiritual awareness at all. this gift is about to be born, right? And we're not trained like that either from young, depending on how we're trained. But most of us, hopefully, are amenable to being a mother. Mother, but not all of us do that because we don't know any better. We're not trained like that. We don't care that much. We don't know where the feeling comes from. You know what I'm saying? So that puts a big wrench in the works, and that affects everybody in that circle and beyond.
That reminds me of one patient I had when I was working in the emergency rooms doing psych crisis. She was in the medical section for a while before they moved her over to the psych annex. And I got to talking with her while we were doing her evaluation. She said, she's telling me, she said, I never saw as many evil spirits anywhere as I saw in that emergency room. And I said, well, what did you see? She said, well, they were all over the place. They were all over the place in the emergency room. She said, I watched this one doctor giving a patient a diagnosis. And she said, as he was giving the diagnosis, she said she saw a whole stream of black frogs coming out of his mouth and going into the patient. And she told me, she said, if he believes what that doctor is telling him, he will get what the doctor is diagnosing.
Exactly.
Then that's like, boom. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's when they talk about words being spell casting,
Yeah.
And the thing is, and especially when we're looking at these situations, because again, they've taken away through the medical mafia, they've taken away our ability to know that we are sovereign beings and have the ability to actually heal our own body. I have proved that to myself and with plenty that I've worked with over the years, right? So they take away they don't teach you that your soul is sovereign.
Right.
They don't, which is why they've taken away so many of the books in the Bible. For example, the ones that teach you that your soul is sovereign, right? So you come in here having given your power away already to the medical mafiosa, right? And the church, because now you've signed your name away and you've now, already had your first jab, your first 3 jabs before you're 2 days old, and, circumcised as a boy, no doubt. I mean, that's a whole different topic on its own, right? And traumatized into low hell, right? So that's your entrance into the world immediately. I mean, the first thing they do is they smack the baby's backside to get rid of the flesh. What a trauma to the child.
Right. Yeah.
What a trauma.
Yeah, that's how we start life, folks. I mean, can you imagine coming up with that idea? Think about it. We go through that coming into this world. We're bombarded from the moment we get here. And then we're continued to be bombarded all the way through all kinds of stuff. Everybody's got different traumas. Everybody's got different experiences. And still, there's enough of us. There's a whole big bunch of us who are finally getting out of it. It's like, oh my God, what was I being taught? This is a lie. This is not true. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to do it anymore. Well, if you're in the habit of doing it, you got to break that habit, and that takes some time. I understand that because I know what breaking a habit is like. So, I mean, and for most people that I know who broke a habit, doesn't matter what kind of habit it is, you're not really free until you've broken that habit. So,
you know what you were saying about the Catholic Church. I'd never been attracted to the Catholic Church at all. I saw they had amazing buildings, but I had a friend who was both a Swedenborgian and a staunch Catholic, and he said, you ought to come to Catholic Mass with me one time. And I was hesitant, and I went, well, I'll just go to see what's going on. Right? So this was my experience. We go into that church, and the preacher starts doing this diatribe, and everybody stands up at a certain point. There was no signals given. I mean, they knew to stand up. They knew to sit down. It was like the whole congregation was trained when to stand, when to sit, when to stand, when to sit, and that went over and over and over like 4 or 5 times. And I'm like amazed. I'm like, how do they know when to do this? I mean, at a certain point, they knew to all stand up. They all knew to sit down. It was like they were programmed. And then I'm listening to what the preacher had to say. You know, I was like, what has he got to say that's of any value in the real world? And there was like 1 or 2 crumbs. And then that plate got passed around like 3 or 4 times, you know, the plate you put money in. And it's like, what's going on here? You know, it's like it made no sense to me whatsoever. It's like, why did they come here? I mean, it's the same thing week after week after week. It just blew my mind. I never went back. I just
Oh, you should have attended some of the Sunday schools, Jerry. They were amazing.
For good or bad?
Confusing and not true. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll bet. I'll bet brainwashed.
Well, yeah, I mean that's where I learned that I couldn't take communion without going to confession.
Oh, for crying out loud!
Yeah.
Well, you know, when you see what goes on and you see how they've used religion to literally infiltrate the churches, right? And that's true, because one of the guys I had as a guest on the show, Caleb Jade, he's an ex-mage, right? From in the satanic world, and he was adept in all 9 levels of dark magic. And he would talk about how psych wards and prisons are the 2 main sources that they use, because they would then target the certain prisoners, or in the medical world, in the hospitals and stuff, and they use crystals to literally usurp the soul, right? Keep it in the crystal where it's used as a battery. And then that's how that the body is then left wide open for these entities to take hold of that body and use it as a host. But they need the people alive, because they keep feeding, of course, their battery, right? They are the power source of this battery that they use to do their dark magic, because they need that energy to do their dark magic. And the places they do it most is what he was saying, definitely prisons and psych wards as well, and obviously other places as well. I mean, and churches. Oh boy, churches! They would love going to churches. Because they would then notice, and these guys are all highly psychic. You got to know this. They smell these dodgy preachers, and they would corrupt the preachers. They would go in there and they corrupt the ministers or the pastors or whatever, and they use them to exactly what you're saying. It's like you open up, you talk, and the frogs come out. That's exactly what they would use them for. So the doctor would come in there and say, yes, well, you've got cancer and you need this and this. You actually spewing that dark energy onto that person. And if that person is susceptible and has given their power away to the medical industry to say, oh my God, the doctor has decided I have 3 days to live, so let me go and write my last will and testament. You've completely given your power away then, right? Mm-hmm. You decide. You have sovereignty over your body. You and your creator, not some dodgy doctor. I mean, a doctor's there to help you, right? Not draw you down. But they have no compassion anymore. The doctors, they have no empathy. It's like slice and dice.
You know, I remember when I was reading Robert Monroe. Now he's an astral traveler. He traveled all over the universe. He's been able to get out of his body ever since he was, younger. And he made all these trips. He said one day he was asleep and he heard this voice in his head saying, "You've got 6 months to live." All right. And he got out of his body and he saw this entity on top of him whispering that in his ear. Now, he said you would think that that thing would look like an evil creature, but he said it looked like an angel, you know, brilliant white, which shook me up. And it's like, well, so they can take whatever form they want.
Well,
Now,
yeah.
now he actually said, had I believed that what they were saying, he said I wouldn't be here right now.
Exactly.
And I recall
Exactly.
sending you an email, Jerry, when you told me that story, that because I keep a dream log, and I had a dream. This was several years ago, I think, and so I woke up in a straight up sit up. What the dream was that you have cancer. And I'm like, what? I don't have cancer, and I just realized that that's what that was. It was somebody trying to implant that into my head. So I sent an email to Jerry, and I said, here, after listening to your thing, here's what I had in my dream. I just sent him the whole dream. And yeah, so I'm imagining that, a lot of people have that experience, so if they get a diagnosis, excuse me, from a doctor that they trust, or whether they know them or not. But if they're in that mindset of handing over their power to the doctor, so they're not going to ask questions, they're not going to, be inquisitive, they're not going to ask them, they wouldn't know what to ask anyway. But yeah, so if they just listen to the doctor, I'm amazed at how many people over time, when you think back, the people that I know who have died, they were all told you have this many weeks to live, you have this many months to live. And sure enough, after so many weeks and so many months, they were gone. It didn't matter what happened, what they tried. They were just gone. So I think that, this is a powerful injection that, these entities are doing to the people.
Yeah. And I think this is why it's so fantastic to have this information. And guys, please share these shows. This is so important. Right here, we're sitting to the key of healing. Really, this to me is understanding this knowledge, is understanding that we have the key to unlocking this horrific abuse of our mental health and our medical system. Your body is designed to heal itself. We just have to learn how to go back and activate that healing. We don't need all of this outside stuff. We really don't. When we realize that, do things like, Jerry, the mace method, that is so fantastic. And it doesn't just have to be with mental health. Anything, physical health too. And I know, Sherry, you had Stop the Lie, or That's a Lie. It's a Lie, right?
Yeah, that's a lie program. Yeah,
That's a Lie. You got That's a Lie program, and I saw a comment earlier on, and there goes my camera again. That clearly doesn't want me to be seen. And there's off my face again. You see?
Yeah, you're being messed with.
Yeah, exactly.
You're being messed with. They don't like you.
Yeah, exactly. Just like, rather put yourself popping out of a champagne bottle, Chantal. Anyway, so yeah, I think that's wonderful. That this information is coming out. We need to know.
There's a fellow named Bruno Groening, Groning, I believe. He was alive during World War II, and he would heal crowds of hundreds of people all at the same time. And what he did is the same things that the Gnostics are saying, is that you can access God directly. You don't need to go through a church. You don't need to go through all these rituals. You don't need to go through meditation. He said, just sit there and, watch your breath, feel your heartbeat, shut down your mind, and just allow God to come in, And he would heal hundreds of people all at the same time. They banned him. The Germans banned him from doing that. They didn't allow him to heal people. You know,
But
there's
that plan didn't work, as I remember in that movie I saw. I mean, the people wouldn't stand for it in this particular case, and so that was part of the film. Toward the end, they just went. They didn't pay attention to the German guys who were forbidding this. They just went in anyway.
yeah.
It was no fight. There was no riot. There was no nothing. They just went in. And
Eventually he had to stop.
That's what we have to do as a collective on this planet, in my opinion.
Exactly.
I think we just need to not don't do any riots, don't do any marches, don't do any of that stuff. That's like not going to work. They're expecting that, they want that, because then it'll keep us divided. So if we just, hey, I'm just not going to do that. You go ahead and do whatever you want to do. I'm not going to do that. It doesn't matter what it is, whatever rule they put out there. If it's a nonsense rule, don't follow it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
everything I tell you, do the opposite thereof.
Yeah.
Their power comes from saying no.
Yes, I agree. No.
No. You
don't have to be angry or nasty about it. Just, no, I'm not going to do it. No.
Well, that's the government also, the authorities. Their power comes from saying no.
That's right.
They don't get any power from saying yes.
Yeah, exactly.
They get it from saying no. So you look at all these rules and regulations and all this garbage you have to go through, before they will say yes. And half the time they still say no.
Yeah, it's all a setup.
It's all a setup.
Exactly. It's designed to be this way. And what's wonderful, because this is the trap, it's the information, it's like people will perish through lack of knowledge, right?
Exactly.
So when we have the information, this is information that sets us free from the matrix. This is information that dissolves the matrix. When we apply this information, we understand that these are voices. It's not you. They've gotten to you when you're in a traumatized state. So what do you have to do? You literally have to go back and untraumatize yourself in whichever way you as an individual need to. Discuss it with your therapist, whoever. Each person will do it in their own way. But I can say for sure, the less complex it is, the more simple the method is of healing, the more you're going to get to the core of it.
Well, there is one way that the average person can get to the junk that's buried in their subconscious mind.
Yes.
Usually put there via a trauma, and then they react to anybody who's similar to that person who traumatized them. So what the ego does is it projects that garbage out away from them and blames it on other people that are similar to the person who traumatized them. Now, MACE takes care of that, but you can do that by yourself. It takes a little more work. Is when you see somebody and you don't like them or you don't like what they say, ask yourself, do I have that trait in me?
Mm-hmm.
Because usually you're projecting out that trait that you have onto somebody else,
Exactly.
and it comes back.
Those are the mirrors of the Essene.
The mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mirror.
Yeah.
That
goes very deep. And we're it goes very deep. I think there's 7 mirrors. Is that right, Chantel?
Yes, there would be, but if you look at it in a mirror as well, when you look in the mirror, it's infinite. And I would say rather than the mirror, because we look at the mirror and that's a single image, reflecting back to you. But we have to understand we're actually holographic mirrors. So there are so many different beautiful holographic patterning within each and every one of us. And it's so amazing when we start discovering the beauty that lives within us. You will never be jealous again of anyone when you realize what is inside of you. You would never think a bad thought about yourself again when you realize how much your creator loves you. You could never, ever not like yourself ever again, because as you start healing and opening up and your heart starts filling with truth, you are inspired, given knowledge in whichever way it comes to you, through other people, through books, through dreams, whatever, of what your unique purpose and your unique path in this life is. Everyone has their unique path. No one else is designed to be on your path, and you are not designed to be on anyone else's path. We're walking together. We're all just one big band, one big orchestra, each playing our instrument that creates this beautiful choir. And we need to realize that, because when we do, we're never going to be jealous, angry, hateful, want to put witchy spells on another or whatever. I mean, that's like so kindergarten. That's so freaking
It is.
kindergarten.
It is, and I'm thinking that I'm quite sure that humanity will get to that point. I don't think I'll be alive for that to see that, but my grandchildren might, or their children might. But I do believe that the humanity is heading in the right direction. We're at this particular crossroads right now, and this is a pretty crucial time in this whole chapter of life. So I think people are beginning to understand on one level or another. Doesn't, we're not doing competition here. It's just everybody's at their own speed and their own level. That's cool. That's why it's such an interesting planet. I mean, the experiment is really an awesome experiment.
Yeah, we're all connected, but there's two trip points you need to watch out for. One is methamphetamine, and the prisoners call that the devil's drug. And they're producing it by the ton, with precursors from China coming into South America and being shipped all over the world. I've seen more schizophrenics go psychotic on meth than any other drug, and it starts out where they're taking the stuff, and then they start hearing these horrible voices telling them terrible things, and they go, oh, well, that's just a hallucination. It'll go away when I come down. And it does. And it may go away 5 times or 10 times or 50 times, and then one day it doesn't, and they're stuck with those voices for the rest of their lives, and they're just as psychotic as anybody on the psych ward. The second one is Ouija boards. I've seen a lot of people playing with Ouija boards, and they say all of a sudden the voice that they were talking to on the Ouija board, whoever they were, all of a sudden appears in their head, and it doesn't go away. So Ouija boards aren't toys. You don't know who you're connecting with or what you're connecting with. They should be banned. They should be outlawed.
Do you know how many kids, if you look on Amazon, how many Ouija boards there are for kids?
Oh, gosh.
Because I did that. I did research on that maybe 2 years ago now. And I actually did it when that Barbie movie came out. That was that Barbie movie, that whatever it was.
It was ridiculous.
That for me was that whole teleporting from human to doll, whatever, and they were using Ouija boards, and there was like Barbie Ouija boards. What fashion should I wear today? Stuff like that. Can you believe it? And that made me then look. I went onto Amazon, and it's crazy because we have to remember they're attacking our kids, right? Yeah. They're attacking our kids. So we have to look at what we are showing our kids, what we're allowing our kids to have access to. They make it so irresistible for kids because as a mother and a grandmother, I can say for sure, when my kid sees something on TV, oh boy, they're going to nag. They're going to nag. And God help you if 3 or 4 friends have the same thing at school. You have got no chance of not getting that child whatever it is that they need to fit in. They've understood that. So they start already with these things at school, right? And we have to be aware. Disney, we know Disney is a haven for pedos. So cut out Disney movies. In fact, take your kids out into nature. Nature, animals, laughter, holidays, fun, card games, connecting heart connection with each other. That's what we have to go back to. We really, really have to go back to sitting down, having meals at the table together.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And yeah, that's the first thing that was destroyed. I remember when my son went to school, and he's now close to 40. The headmistress said, when all the new parents went there, and the headmistress said, please, parents, if there's one thing I ask you to do, it's sit down with your kids and have a meal with them. Don't let them eat in front of the TV. And it's like she explained that children don't even know how to hold a knife and fork anymore. I'm going back 35 odd years ago now. Even then, just with TV, it was becoming a problem. And I got to tell you, that is something I've never forgotten. I always sat down with him and ate. We always had our meals together. That was one thing that I think that was one of the things, probably the few things I did right as a mother.
Yeah.
Get him on the show. Oh no, we're not getting him on the show.
Well, a lot of people in those days used a television as a babysitter.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
they would just plunk their infant in front of the TV and go off and do stuff that they had to do in the house. They didn't have to watch the baby because the baby was being absorbed by the television. So yeah, and we didn't pay attention to what was being told to them or shown to them because we didn't know either. You know, my era, I didn't know. You know, I didn't know. I remember one time my son was grown up and he said, you remember at the end of the show, there'd be just a bunch of colored lines. It'd be the end of the show before they'd sign off, and then they'd play the Star Spangled Banner, and then they would just go blank. And I think this was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And so he was remembering that particular pattern from his childhood. And when he told me this, he was like in his 50s. And I'm like, oh my God, I forgot all about that. You know, I mean, I did not mean to sit you in front of the TV like that. I didn't know. He said, yeah, I know you didn't know. Neither did I. So, you know, we were okay with that. I mean, it did whatever it did. And, you know, it was apparently not big enough trauma to really mess him up, but maybe it was. I don't really know. But
well, they don't call it programs for nothing.
No, yeah, that's true. I have no idea what went in there. You know.
Sure.
So anyway, so that's what we did back in those days. In my day, and
Wow.
you know, Jerry and I are pretty much we're close in age. I think there's 5 or 6 years apart, but yeah, and
I remember that.
We're quite a few years apart from you, I think. Anyway, but each era has their own thing, but when you look at it, it seems to me like they're all the same. You know, they just different flavors.
Definitely. Wow. This has been a really great show. And I want to just say thank you so much, Sherry and Jerry, for joining me tonight again. Jerry, I always appreciate having you on our monthly show. Sherry, I would actually love to have you on again as well.
Okay.
I think you have a lot to share with us.
Okay.
If I can just imagine behind the scenes there's a lot that you have to talk about. So I would definitely like to have you.
I can guarantee you there is.
This is what I'm saying, you know. Definitely.
She's only let out a fraction of it today.
I feel that. I definitely feel that. So, Jerry, we'll grab her on with us again in the future, right?
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Is there anything, Sherry, I'll start with you and then Jerry, just in closing, anything you'd like to share, a message for our viewers, and also where can people get hold of you, although your details will be in the description area as well. Everything is in there.
Yeah, so people can get a hold of me through my website. It's keyholejourney.com. And there's a blog selection on the menu. So if you click that, then there's a one that says if you're looking for the That's a Lie program, click here. Otherwise, click the blog. And so that you go in 2 different directions. the point I wanted to make earlier, and we got sidetracked, so I never did make it, is that in spite of all the bad stuff that those guys are throwing at us from the moment we're born until we die, including teaching us to be scared to death of death, which is really kind of foolish. At any rate, so in spite of all that stuff, we are so powerful that they can't get rid of us. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience. Everybody's heard that. Okay, so that's absolutely true. What we do with our physical experience is up to us and whatever they say we decided before we got here. I don't know. I mean, I've heard that out of a lot of people. So a lot of people believe that. And I don't know whether I do or not, but whatever, if that's the case, I chose a particularly eclectic life. That's the best word I can think of. So I've learned a lot. Maybe I was having a conversation with my sister some years back before she passed, and we were kind of comparing notes about how we did this. So we came to the conclusion that, well, maybe we just decided we're tired of all this reincarnation stuff. We want to do it all this next time, get it all out and done. Okay.
And then out of the matrix.
Out of the matrix we go. So that was the whole idea. So thank you very much for having me.
I love that. I think that's what we have to realize. You know, a lot of people don't believe or think reincarnation's evil or something. I'll tell you what, if you're on this planet, then you have been reincarnated. And reincarnation is the matrix we get stuck in. And this is why when we realize these spiritual awarenesses that we're talking about, that's what takes us out of the matrix. Mm-hmm. So we have to acknowledge reincarnation most definitely exists.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sorry, Jerry, and anything from you?
You can. My website is jerrymarzinsky.com, and there's information there about a new cutting-edge energetic psychotherapy. It's nothing like traditional psychotherapy at all, and you can find information about that there. It gets rid of most psychological problems in an hour.
Yeah, the mace. Jerry?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, was that the mace you were talking about? The
mace
myth? Yeah. Okay, well, there's Jerry's website that's scrolling over the bottom, down the bottom, across the bottom, over, down. Gosh, English is such a complex language, isn't it? Anyway, thank you so much, Jerry and Sherry. Always a pleasure, and definitely look forward to having you back. To all our amazing viewers in the chat, thank you guys so much. Joanne, thank you so much for your super chat. I really appreciate you guys very much. Really, I do. And for everybody in here, have a beautiful Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'll be back with you tomorrow with, as I said, with Jesse Zabota, book club, Patreon book club members. You're welcome to join. Check. There's a post in the membership section with giving you the link for the Zoom tomorrow. So look forward to seeing you guys. God bless. Take good care. And I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.